And welcome everybody to episode 10 of Down Under World Denizens. That's right, we've made it to double figures. It's only onwards and upwards from here. And we're starting off today with a question for our regular commentators. What is your favorite second edition miniature? Millsy, why don't you start us off since I'm pretty sure we know what that one is.
Okay, my favorite second edition miniature is actually my favorite miniature of every piece of Blood Bowl, and it's the second edition Skaven Thrower. Now, they did have two, so I'm specifically talking about the one that's pointing and holding the ball in his backhand down. It's just, I've loved this figure from the moment I've seen it. So that's my favorite second edition model.
Yeah. And look, I just want to back Millsy on that one. I actually think the second edition Skaven team is probably the best second edition team in terms of, just the fantastic sculpts. I really do think second edition Blood Bowl really punched above its weight, but you've got to put it in the time period it was produced, right? I mean, we're talking 1980s here. And, so you've got to put the miniatures in that time period. So, yeah, of course, in terms of where the mold lines are, they're pretty much straight lines. And so the dynamic poses that we're used to today weren't quite what they are now. But yeah, I totally think that actually that choice of miniature is a really good representation of highlighting one of the best things about second edition Blood Bowl miniatures, and that is the Skaven team. Mine is very similar, so I had no idea that Millsy was going to pick that. But I've picked the second edition Elf Blitzer with the mohawk and the hockey mask. I think it kind of epitomizes Blood Bowl of that era. And I think they've tried to cling to a little bit of that kind of style, that kind of look, for a long, long time. And I think it's kind of the correct kind of look, if you like, for Blood Bowl. So yeah, it's my favorite miniature. As much as there are some great star players from that time period, again, I think the Elf team is a really nicely sculpted team, and I think it stands the test of time quite well. What about you, Wilts? You asked the question, but we haven't heard from you.
Well, it's hard to pin it down sometimes because a lot of those Jez Goodwin sculpts from the back in the day are really crisp and really characterful. But I'm actually going to cheat. I'm going to pick the Lucky Dips Snotlings variety from Kev Adams. Um, I'm picking that category as my favorite miniatures because there's about 26 of them. I can't get enough of them. I need more of them. I've only got about 10 so far, and I need to get all of them eventually. I've used them mostly as my Riders rookies for my Snotling team so far, but I'm sure they'll get plenty more time on the table yet.
Yeah. Hey, I also just want to say there are some amazing miniature star players from that time period too. We didn't mention any particular, but particular honorable mention has to go to the Chaos All Stars. I mean, some of the miniatures in that range are just hilarious, fantastic, very colorful, very flavorful. Yeah. Gotta love it. I mean, Slager Strike comes to mind. We talked about Dieter Hammerlash in a previous episode. Those kind of guys
Don't you
are
mean Hammer Slash?
yeah.
No, I think all of those second edition miniatures, they just remind me so much of all of that. I don't know if it was all Pete Nifton's artwork from from second edition books. It was just like it's like you said with the Elf Blitzer. That was the iconic. If you thought of an elf in that time period, that's the elf that you thought of. They just sort of epitomized what Blood Bowl was.
For sure. Hey, we also have celebrated Australia Day recently, and it would be remiss of us as Down Underworld denizens not to at least acknowledge Australia Day. Lots of countries have their own kind of day to celebrate what it is to be a member of that country. I mean, I guess Independence Day comes to mind with America, and I think the very same day is also the French Day. they commemorate a particular day. Is it Bastille Day in France?
Bastille Day.
Yeah, yeah. So similar kind of, I think that's kind of like their French National Day. Um,
Bastille Day's the 14th of July.
okay, okay. But I guess Australia Day, I think in some sense it's still trying to find its identity. I think I just really want to acknowledge that regardless of which people group, you affiliate with, Aussie Day is a day to celebrate being Australian as well as whatever your culture is. And I think, a lot of Australians have actually selected Australia as home, particularly first generation Australians, of course. And I think lots and lots of people have come to Australia because Australia is a great country, and I think there's nothing wrong with celebrating that Aussie is a great country. So yeah, I just thought it would be worthwhile having a quick chat about Aussie Day. I loved. Oh, we went down. Our local council put on a free sausage sizzle and a bunch of silly games for the kids to do, like a sack race and a three-legged race and an egg and spoon race and a whole bunch of silly things. I think there was a toilet roll toss into a dunny where you had to throw a roll of toilet paper into a mock toilet. It was just, silly, but it was kind of a good opportunity just to say, hey, we quite appreciate being Aussie.
That all sounds like a lot of
Yeah,
fun for the kids. I never didn't get up to anything quite so drastic and strenuous as all that, but I made sure I had a packet of Tim Tams and some shapes and some other good old Aussie snacks to have on hand for a quiet night in.
yeah, I might have gone for my traditional Australia Day surf. I got a pair of um, Australian flag board shorts that sort of come out once a year. It's always on Australia Day. Go out for a surf in those and just hanging out at the beach and coming home and having a couple of beers and a quiet one. So it's pretty Australian as well.
Sounds good to me, Bill.
Well, I was going to say, you're talking about acknowledging the people of our land here. So, here in Bundaberg and Gladstone and Rockhampton, the region where we record our podcast, we want to acknowledge the traditional country of. There's quite a few traditional peoples. There's the Tarrabalang Bunda, the Garangarang, the Garang, the Byalee, and the Durrumbal peoples. And we recognise that this country has always been and continues to be a cultural, spiritual, and social significance to those Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely worth doing as Down Under World Denizens. And I think, I think it's great to be Aussie. I think it's great to acknowledge Aussie. And my segue into Blood Bowl is I actually have a team deliberately painted up to be kind of a proud of being Aussie kind of team. That's my actual Down Under World Denizen team. Like I actually have a Down Under World Creatures. And I collected them all and I've painted them all up to play as Underworld Denizens. So yeah, they're my Down Underworld creatures, and they're all Aussie animals.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
suppose my segue into that is I'm a big Green Bay Packers fan, so they're green and yellow. So when the Super Bowl's on, I'm playing with my Green Bay Packer team, but at any other time, I'm wearing the green and gold for Australia.
Sounds fair, but unfortunately for you, Milsey, they didn't make the Super Bowl this year.
Let's not go into that, Will.
They did make the playoffs, which is more than the team I thought. Yeah, in fact, at time of recording, Super Bowl is in 2 days' time.
Yeah, I just happen to have the day off from work, so I'm gonna have a couple of
Oh,
drinks and get started at 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, as
You,
the
so
you
broadcast commences.
you need to have a mate over to play Blood Bowl
what's your
while you
hot
watch,
pick?
I reckon.
Well, my regular partner in crime for sort of Super Bowl Mondays is actually having to work because our casual man at work decided to actually have a holiday, so he had to get called into
Ah,
work.
So any hot tips? Who's going to win it?
I think it'd be hard to go past the Chiefs as the favourites, but
Yeah, I'm on the Chiefs as well.
certainly it could still be a real game. We'll wait and see about that.
That said, the Eagles are actually just been announced to be locked in to come and play a regular season game in Melbourne next year against the LA Rams. So yeah, the
Yes,
MCG is going to
that's
be
That's
breaking
awesome.
news.
yeah, MCG is going to be the venue for an NFL game, and already some guys from church have actually contacted me. Oh, let's go down because some of them are American, so yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, why not?
Well, let me know when you're organising plane fares. Let me know. I might sneak on down with you.
Oh, I think if it was against the Cardinals, I'd be there in a flash. But I don't know. I think
Yeah.
for me, I think maybe going to the big V is a higher priority than the NFL. But let's move on to our Strine segment. Speaking of being Aussie, yeah, we want to occasionally explain a bit of Strine, and Millsy's our expert in this area. So off you go, Millsy. Tells us what's our piece of Strine. Who's famous for saying it?
Our piece of Shrine for this segment is "Ya Flamin' Galah." Now, if any of our overseas listeners would have probably heard that already, it comes from Ray Marr, who was a character on Home and Away, one of our early soap operas that I know went to England, was pretty popular over there. But yeah, that was one of Ray's famous sayings when someone had done something wrong. "Ya flamin' galah."
Yeah, I think Ray's the name of the actor. Yeah, what's the name of the character?
Alf Stewart's the
Alf
character.
Stewart is the name of the character.
Alf Stewart. There you go. Well, I'm a flaming galah. I didn't even remember his name, and that's what got us thinking. When would you use it?
Yeah, why would you use it in Blood Bowl? I'll give you an example. Last fumble in the jungle. I went all the way up to Cairns, and I was playing Stewie of all people, and I set up 13 players on the pitch. Now, if that's not an example of being a flaming galah, I don't know what is.
Flaming
And of
galah.
course, the penalties are really harsh for that now, right? Like you actually have two randomly selected players sent off for the game. Now you can argue
It's not random. Your opponent gets to choose, mate.
Oh, see, that's just so harsh. Far out. Anyway,
You
I called it on myself. Anyway, as I said, I did
Well,
it.
that's what makes you a flaming galah. You called it on yourself. You should have just left it.
No, what you should have done is just sneak 2 miniatures off the table and hope no one notices.
I don't know where that sits in the rules, but anyway. Ah, well. Stewie beat me fair and square, regardless, I think. I think it would have happened anyway.
Yeah, I don't have any moments quite like that, but certainly a few of my players, my miniatures on the pitch, you're setting up and it's like, all I need is this guy to do this, and he rolls a bonehead or he double skulls or something like that. And you're just like, I would have got a touchdown if it wasn't for that flaming galah. So I use it quite a bit.
I do have a moment in my Blood Bowl history like that. I do have a moment like that. What about you, Wilts? Got a time or an example where you might use your flaming galah in a game of Blood Bowl?
Not a huge number of examples, but in one of the playoff games against one of my mates, Zach Curry, who made the top 8, but unfortunately ran into me in the first round. I thought I'd done a good job of marking up all of his gutter runners so they couldn't go in and score a touchdown because 2 of them were on the ground, and I marked them all up. And I completely forgot about Hackflem Scuttlespike's special rule, so he didn't even need to make a pass because Hackflem was on the ground. So he ran his thrower up to Hackflem. Hackflem stood up and took the ball, and took the ball because he was already standing. Took the ball with his special rule and just ran it in anyway.
Nice. Yeah, and yeah, speaking of, we've got some
And
breaking.
didn't I feel like a flaming galah standing around?
We got some breaking news. Moving on, we got Stewie is currently at Sydney Bowl, and we've been following along. It's day one down there as at the time of recording, and Stewie, you might say the headline is Stewie brings Chaos Chosen, faces 3 teams of AV8. And that sounds exciting. That sounds fantastic. Exactly what you want, like great, fantastic. Apparently, there's been barely any armor breaks at all. So poor Stewie has just had an.
Oh, there's been plenty of armor breaks, but on Stewie's team
Yeah,
instead of
that's it.
against.
Game 2, his own team got decimated by Elven Union. The shame. So we want to have a little competition. We want to hear about your absolute shocker, your tale of woe. Now, I mentioned before that I had a flamin' galah moment. Well, here it is. This goes way back to 2008. I was playing in Mountain Bowl, and at the time there was a coach in Australia called Ian Williams, or Ian Double Skull Williams. He came out from the UK, really, really good coach, and he was my nemesis. I could not beat him in a game of Blood Bowl. Anyway, he was playing Wood Elves. I was playing humans. I had him down to 3 players. I had absolutely decimated him. The ball was on the ground. I needed my human thrower to pick up the ball and hand it off to a catcher. And of course, 3+ with rerolls. 4 turns in a row. I could not do it. And of course, his Wood Elves eventually get up, recover, pick up the ball and score. The end.
No.
Of course, you
So
only
I
need
That's
looked
two
at
L's on the
that
devastating.
table
game.
to score a
You
touchdown.
can look that up on the NAF, Mountain Bowl 2008. Still lost. Still lost. Yeah, so yeah, we want to hear about your tales of woe. As I said, Stewie's had some tales of woe. Well, I don't think we've heard the final result of game three yet, but yeah, it certainly hasn't been a great game one and game two against Woodies and Elven Union. Bit sorry, sad and sorry for Stewie. Yeah, suffering, being Chaos Chosen, not being able to break armor on elves and suffering casualties against Elven Union. But yeah, we want to hear, our listeners. We want to hear about your tales of woe, and we're so keen to hear. We've got a prize up for grabs. Millsy, fill us in.
Yeah, we've got once again, thanks to Tats Tabletop, we've got a brute fun goblin bomber for you telling us when you bombed out in your game of Blood Bowl.
And obviously that bomber could be used as a goblin bomber, but it could be used as a couple of stars, couldn't it?
It certainly could.
So yeah, speaking of tats, actually, we've been madly practicing for the Brisbane City Bash, and so from time to time, Millsy and I get together. I drive from work down to Rosedale, and Millsy drives up from his work to Rosedale. We meet in the middle, and Millsy brought a secret weapon. That is Tats epoxy resin dice. They were on fire that game. Millsy, fill us in.
Oh, they were on fire. I mean, it helped a little that your dice were off kilter a bit, but yeah, like I was just knocking people down, powers left, right, and center. The beauty of it is it didn't matter whether you rolled it across the other side of the table; you can still see it really, really well. But I do remember one time then when you had your troll on the ground, so I thought I might as well just lay the boot in here. So I rolled double six for armor, double six for injury. Must have been seen by the ref. Rolled a six for argue the call. So five sixes in a row. Um, they were fantastic. Now, I do have one little problem with your dice up there, Tats. They don't allow me to get my werewolves back from regenning. So apart from that, they worked a treat.
Mind you, I think
Um,
Regen was just turned off for the day because my troll didn't come back from that foul either.
True, that's true. But I was actually chatting to Tats just the other day, and like the next thing he's got that he's bringing out with his dice is custom D6. And he said he can do custom D6, custom logos on all six sides of a dice if you're after that. And I think he's willing to do them in batches of a minimum of 20. So, if you've got a couple of guys in your league that just want to do have a league sort of dice for yourself, or if you're organising a tournament, you can certainly do larger batches than that. But I'd get in touch with Tats Tabletop because these dice are amazing. You can get them in both epoxy or you can get them in resin ones. So
Yeah, plastic,
they're
yeah.
fantastic.
So there's
Plastic,
two
sorry, yeah.
ways. There's two ways. Yeah, Tats can cast them himself out of epoxy resin. They're the ones you were using. And just to really iterate, I actually really struggle sometimes. I mean, I do need glasses now because I'm getting old, but I do struggle to read the GW, the current GW dice. Somebody will have a fairly clear set of dice, right? They roll them, and you're looking from the other side of the table. I honestly can't tell the difference between a power and a both down. Like I have struggle to identify the two different symbols because they're inside that logo. Anyway, that's just my little gripe about the current set of GW dice. But that I had no problems like that with Millsy's resin dice because they're a low sheen, like they're a satin sheen. They're not gloss like plastic dice. They're crystal clear. Like we weren't playing in high light level. In fact, they turned lights on for us at the pub. And so it wasn't exactly high light level, and I had no issues whatsoever making out the symbols on the dice. Now it did help that they were a nice contrasting color scheme, maroon and white. But yeah, they were just a pleasure to play against, other than the fact that Millsy smashed me. But other than that,
I also like that they got nice, crisp, sharp edges on them as well. They're really cool.
Yeah, well, adding to that, they're like you said, they're sharp edges, but they're not sharp edges. They've got the tiniest of rounding to them, so they're a nice crisp and clean edge, but they're not sharp. You're not going to be cutting fingers or pitches or anything like that. But do have a really nice,
I think the term is
perfectly.
I think the term is casino dice. I don't think they're casino dice. They're more round than that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. They're not casino, but they are really crisp, and they come in a your own little carry case tin. But they're perfect. So get on to Tats Tabletop and have a look. Hopefully by now he'll have his website up, but if not, find him on Facebook and send him a message, and he can start working some stuff out for you.
Yeah. I know he's actually already been reasonably busy. I've seen some of his work. He was messaging me now. The plastic dice, he orders the blanks from China, so that they are cast in plastic. They come over, and then he can engrave them, and he can engrave just one side. And in other words, he can get the pips on the other five sides. So yeah, your D6, no problem. But he can also do block dice that way as well. So you can get complete blanks. And we're actually in chats with Tats to provide some dice for Down Under World Denizens, because in breaking news, we've got a shop. Yeah, the shop is actually on Etsy. It's actually downunderworldmerch.etsy.com. So please jump on there, have a little look. And I just want to say, while there are still things coming like the dice, have a good look at what we've already got up there. In particular, I've worked pretty hard to get some shirts up there with some brands that would be appropriate to sponsor your team. And we're keen to know, what else do you want to see in our shop? If there's something that you would buy if it was up in the shop, we want to hear about it, because we don't want to be a podcast that goes down that traditional road of having a Patreon or something like that. What we want to do instead is give back to you, our listeners, by providing a product that you're interested in any way. So we've got pictures up there, we've got patches up there, we've got shirts up there. But let us know what else you want. In fact, we've got footwear on there. So yeah, we've got our thongs. We've got some like Converse style canvas shoes. Yeah, I've sold a set of those. So yeah, I want to hear about what you want to see in our shop.
And just a reminder for some of our overseas listeners, thongs here in Australia are what you'd call flip flops. So we haven't gone down that route of underwear yet. So we're still on our flip flops or
That might be a marketing
jandals for
opportunity.
those.
There was a famous there was a famous time period where you could actually buy undies with the NAF logo on it. It is true that Cafe Press at one point in time did official NAF undies. I don't think we're planning to go there, but yeah, we do have a whole range of various items up there. We're keen to know what we're missing. Yeah, we want you to have a good look, and as I said, we're only trying to provide something you're going to want. So that's the best way to make sure that we're funding this podcast and keeping it free.
All righty. And there's some other news that's just come out. I know when Babs and we had our game the other day, he's going, "Oh, Millsy, you're going to love this." There's a new, I don't know what you call it, a new update for tournament approvals and giving tournament organisers a lot more flexibility with star players. Babs, fill us in on that one.
Yeah, so the NAF have basically, every year they produce a new set of tournament guidelines about how tournament organisers can get their tournaments approved, and they've actually they've introduced some more flexibility there. They were a little restrictive about exactly what you could and couldn't do to get your tournament NAF approved. Now, of course, you can completely ignore them and just not go NAF approval. That's one option. But what they've said specifically is that the tournament organiser is now permitted to make adjustments to costs of certain star players or add additional restrictions on the availability of star players. For example, tournament organisers can choose to add a team value tax on Bomber Dribble Snot, or disallow Skidder Stab to play for Chaos Dwarves. So there's two examples of what you can do. So
Obviously not limited by those examples. They're just for demonstration purposes.
Yeah, in fact, they're the examples that the NAF specifically gave. So the point is that I think the NAF is acknowledging that star players are still running amok in certain rule sets, that the issue hasn't really been resolved at this point in time. And that's one of the reasons why we at Down Under World Denizens provided an opportunity for, balancing stars through what we did at Christmas time when we released the star player tiers for you to consider. So there's something to look at, because I believe that does solve the issue, or it's one way to solve the issue. Now, there are others out there, but I think this is an acknowledgement by the NAF that star players are still being quite potent under certain rule sets, and greater flexibility is needed for tournament organisers to rein them in. And I think, Millsy, you've been saying that for some time.
I certainly have. Like that's one of my pet hates with star players at the moment is the amount of teams they can play with. I would say the best way to fix these star players is let's get Tom Anders back into GW somehow and get him to get star players working for us again. So for those people that remember last episode when we talked with Tom, star players were not overpowered in LRB 5 and LRB 6 because they had limited teams to play for, and they played for teams that you would think so. Like Skaven didn't go and play on dwarf teams like they do now. So I would say vote one, get Tom back.
Well, and as I said, we have developed a rule set that we believe works to rein them in. But there is work required there. You can't just grab the standard GW rule set and go, there you go, that's fine. Lots of different rule sets have done lots of different things, but clearly the NAF are saying, look, I don't think we're there yet. And to be fair, I want to compliment the NAF on being bold and effectively saying that. I mean, they're not actually saying it, but they're effectively saying that further work's required. And I have to confess, Mills and I were practicing for the Brisbane City Bash, and I am going to be cheesy and I am going to test out a particular star that I think is a little bit over the top, and I'm bringing that star with my goblins to Brisbane City Bash. So yeah,
that unstoppable star.
yeah, I guess it's not really that much of a secret, but yes,
just quietly.
I'm madly painting up my goblins to get them ready in time. So I have about 6 players to go that I've got to paint up, but I've got a couple of weeks, so I've been madly painting, and that's my goal for the next couple of weekends is hit that painting table, paint like mad. Yeah, so
and this is the same team that I played 2 years ago in our gerbil final. Was it that's still waiting to be painted?
I am the world's slowest painter, and as I was saying to you on Tuesday, I think I've really stretched myself in terms of my New Year's resolutions because I've realised I've accidentally promised that I'd paint up 4 teams this year. I don't think I've ever managed to do that ever. So that would be my world fastest painting record if I achieve that New Year's resolution. But Milsey, you've kicked one of your New Year's resolution goals.
I have kicked one of my tongue-in-cheek New Year's resolution was to be given a shout out by another podcast, and that happened on the Eye of Nuffle podcast. So,
hooray!
Yeah, Ian, not the porn guy, McKinley, phoned in from Australia when he was over here or after our tournament for a segment on the Eye of Nuffle podcast there, and specifically gave me and Babs a shout out. So it is my second time actually. I was on episode 9 of Both Down, but wasn't known as Millsy. It was just Paul from Australia. So yeah.
So yes.
At least they didn't drag you out into the car park for a beating this time. It was an actually nice shout out.
It was a nice one, yes.
Yeah, and I'm still whittling away at my New Year's resolutions. As I said, the goblins on the painting table, and my weight goal is I'm busy working away at that too. Yeah, but we're madly finalising our lists for Brisbane City Bash. Eye of Nuffle podcast were very kind and kept rosters hidden in their latest episode so that people could take their rosters secretly off to Brisbane City Bash without spilling the tea on what teams they're taking. And looking forward to Brisbane City Bash in a couple of weeks. So anybody want to say anything else about Brisbane City Bash other than it's the last Rego? You'd know that last opportunity to make the state team, and that's one of Wiltz's goals.
It is one of my goals. So I've done a lot of cogitating on it, and I think the absolute minimum that I can finish and make the team is 4th, as long as I beat the 3 other people that I'm competing against for that last spot. So 4th or better is the goal. Obviously, a win makes it irrelevant to what everyone else is doing, and I can just get there.
Yeah, and I think the South Island of New Zealand have firmed up their team too. So teams are firming up. So we'll be right up there with it in a couple of weeks' time with a finalised team shortly after the Brisbane City Bash.
And I only need to come first, get most touchdowns and most casualties to get my spot on the team.
Absolutely.
It's doable.
And have me not come second.
Yeah, and the NAF have not stopped with just that bit of news. Even though it wasn't in their latest publication, they actually have edited and got up to speed something else that's pretty new. They've actually produced a new way of looking at your rankings in the NAF that aren't tied to team. Like normally a coach, when you start a new race in the NAF, you start at a coach ranking of 150, and then for each NAF ranked game you play with that, there's like a little, like an ante, like an amount of money that you put in the middle of the table, so to speak, metaphorically speaking. And the opponent also puts an amount in, and you play the game, and whoever wins the game gets the pot. And if you draw, then it's just distributed, accordingly. So you can actually go up and down slightly if you draw, depending upon how high your ranking is, depends how much you have to put in. So the higher your NAF ranking, the more money, the more ELO ranking you have to put in. So that's layman's terms of how that kind of works. Well, that is tied not just to coach, but to the team that you play. So if I've got a really high ranking with Dark Elves, for example, and I pick up a new team like Amazons, then I start back at 150. It doesn't take any consideration as to how good a coach I am. So, there's been lots of discussion over the years as to, is this the best way to rank our coaches? So what they've done is they've produced a new way of showing those rankings where year by year, you're just ranked as a coach. So again, each year you start at 150, and it doesn't matter which team you take, your rankings go up and down from the same database, but they tally your rankings according to, irrespective of what team you're playing, your ranking goes up and down. So they've just released this, and they've made it backwards compatible. So you can go all the way back to 2003 and see how coaches are ranked. And I guess, and Down Under World Denizens, we just wanted to give a bit of a shout out to some coaches that did really well. So Kiltane Quilty came 15th in Australia, and right behind him in 16th was Chris Stratford on 16th. So two of our Queensland coaches in the top 20. Great work. And there's a bunch of coaches. There's about another 3 or 4 just outside the top 20. So yeah, it's great to see Queensland coaches doing really well in Australians' annual rankings of coaches. So that's not properly linked yet. So we might put a post in to the Down Under World Denizens Facebook page, so anybody can jump in and have a look. And a little acknowledgement that our very own Wilts has managed to come 56th in Australia. So well done, mate. Congrats.
Oh, there's lots of room for improvement on that one as well, mate. I'm going to be aiming for the top 30 next year, or
Yeah.
this year, I guess.
Yeah, well, look, as I said, it doesn't really matter what team you're taking. It counts the same way. So, if I take goblins, it still ranks me, right? So it doesn't factor in, if you're playing seriously or not. And as I said, it's backwardsly compatible, and the proof is really that I think I must have peaked as a Blood Bowl coach in 2005, and you can check that out for yourself. Yeah, so in 2005, I was ranked 5th in Australia, and there was 2 other years, and you can find them yourself, where I was ranked 6th. So yeah, but there's a lot more Blood Bowl coaches these days.
And the good news for the rest of us, other mere mortal players, we've got to look forward to the coming years. My ELO ranking was rather low, but just getting back to what you said there, Babs, like my record wasn't entirely terrible. I had 12 wins, 8 draws, and 13 losses. So literally one more loss than a win. But my ELO come out at 138. So I think what that means is when I was losing to some big ranked players. So if that's not the case, I'm going to call it that anyway and say that's why my ranking is so low.
Well, it could also be that you drew games that your ELO ranking meant you kind of lost overall because the amount of ranking CR or ranking points you put in basically.
Oh, look, it's one of those things that if you like to look at those sorts of things and they mean something to you, they do. If not, they don't. But that's just another thing that the NAF provides for us.
Yeah, and I think you can take these rankings way too seriously, and I don't think that's the way they're intended. They're kind of bragging rights over a beer at the pub and nothing more. And I have no qualms about that at all. I didn't take my most serious competitive team to every tournament last year, so I'm not unhappy with where I ended up. So I think the point is that it is just nice to be able to see where you go. How you're ranked as opposed to other coaches, and I think it's just a nice little thing to look up. I'm looking forward to the NAF continuing to do it. I think it's great, and I love the way that you can look at previous years and you can look up coaches and see what their overall rank for the year is. Yeah, just one more little benefit of being a NAF member.
Yeah, well, and nice segue there. Speaking of looking things up, if you would like to look up one of those teams that's gone whoop whoop, we've been trying to find some information about a team from a long forgotten team from back in second edition. It was called the Arctic Cragspiders. Now they've gone whoop whoop. They've disappeared for a while, but there are hints of them coming back. What have you lads found?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that makes the Arctic Cragspiders worthy of our Gorn Whoop Whoop segment is in particular that in several publications back in second edition, the Arctic Cragspiders were featured as a painted team, and they were painted human miniatures. So the metal human team from second edition were painted up in the Arctic Cragspiders colours, which is kind of an ice blue and white. So quite a few people have looked at the Arctic Crag Spider miniatures over the years and emulated those. In fact, Millsy, did I hear right that you used them as inspiration at one point?
I'm going to use them as inspiration. Yeah, I've got a full human team with halflings and an ogre that I'm going to be painting up as one of the prizes on the beach party rumble at the end of the year. So that's breaking news for everyone. But yeah, I looked at the Arctic Crag Spiders and yeah, when I went back to second edition, like I saw all these things that said this is a human blocker and this is a human blitzer. But when you read, a bit more in depth there, you find out that they were a human team from Norska, which is obviously where our Norse come from. So I think over the years they might have been changed into a Norse team, but they definitely started as a human team.
Yeah, I think the point is that, actually way back in first edition Death Zone, they did release Norse as a race. So, the Norse have good pedigree. They go right back to first edition Death Zone. And they had the standees for Norse, and they had a lineman and a berserker as their two positionals, or their two player types. And when it came to second edition, you got to remember second edition was not all released at once. It was an iterative process. So I think they wanted to talk about the Arctic Crag Spiders, but they hadn't yet released Norse in second edition. And in fact, the Norse didn't come along till second edition until what I think was the last expansion book, which was the Star Player book. So I think Blood Bowl as the box set came out first. Then the Blood Bowl Companion came out second. And then lastly, the Star Player book came out. I believe that's the correct order. And as a result, Norse didn't actually show up till fairly late in the piece. In fact, we don't have any Norse miniatures from second edition. I think it was so late in the piece they didn't actually make any models for Norse. And so, obviously the Arctic Crag Spiders were in the lore and wanted to be talked about, but they hadn't actually officially made a second edition Norse team until fairly late in second edition. So that's why I think they were intended to be a Norse team all along, but they weren't actually officially Norse in second edition until fairly late. That's my interpretation of what happened way back in, late 80s, early 90s, because of course, they were still releasing stuff for second edition until about 92.
Yeah, and one of the things that also makes it a little bit confusing is there was a second edition star player, Wormhow Greyscar. So this is from second edition, but on his star player card, he was listed as a Chaos Human, even though he played for the Arctic Crag Spiders. So there's still that little bit of up in the air of what team were they.
Yeah, although I think that's quite nice in terms of the way they've embedded that in the current Norse team. Like if you have a look at a current Norse team, you can actually align yourself to Chaos as a Norse team, right? And in fact, you have to align yourself to Favored of Corn, I believe. So
Or Undivided.
Undivided. So you can still be a chaotic Norse team under the current edition, and I do believe the current spike for Norse does refer to the Arctic Crag Spiders as a famous Norse team. So they have made that. The other team that had a similar journey is the Vinheim Valkyries. So it also was listed as a human team originally in second edition, and it also is a Norse team. So both of those teams managed to transition from human teams, technically speaking, until a Norse team came out late in second edition and then third edition. So I don't think it's really a retcon. I think they were intended to be Norse all along, but there weren't rules for Norse at that point that were released. And so they just kind of brought them up to speed as the Norse team came. And we've got to remember, third edition had a fairly similar journey in that the Norse team did not come along to third edition until fairly late in the piece. In fact, it wasn't until the re-release of Blood Bowl in 1997 that the human metal team and the Norse team came out and had boxes. And
98.
later than that was the Lizardmen team. The Lizardmen team never had a box. So the Norse team came out in the second release of third edition. There were actually 3 releases of third edition: 94, 97, 98, and 2002.
Yeah, the Lizardmen came out in 2002.
Yeah, so there were three releases of third edition, and each of the box sets were a little different. In fact, by 2002, if you bought the box set, then you got Death Zone included, and you got LRB2 printed in there. So there you go.
Yeah, and speaking of a little bit different, the current 2020 version of the Spike magazine lists the Arctic Cragspiders in the Norse Spike as being as a Norse team. And one of the things, if you go through and read the fluff there, it says that they made the Blood Bowl final twice, winning both times. However, if we go back to second edition and look at the stats, they did actually win. They did make it to the Blood Bowl final twice. The first time was in 2473 in Blood Bowl 12 when they beat the Reekland Reavers. And the next time was in Blood Bowl 21, but they were runners-up to the Dark Side Cowboys in 2482. So a little bit of conflicting evidence there of, they've been to the Blood Bowl twice, but how many have they won?
The Vinheim Valkyries also have their name on the trophy at least twice from back in second edition as well.
Was there a more recent time? I know that as the spikes are being released now, they're bringing the Blood Bowl universe along in years. Is one of their Blood Bowl victories more recent than it was at the time of publication of second edition in the Blood Bowl lore?
Well, that's one of the things we look at here when we go on whoop whoop, because when you go whoop whoop, you tend to lose a bit of information here and gain a bit of information there. So they sort of start going down in that mythology and legend sort of status. So we could leave that up to the listeners, whether they've won 2 or 1.
And I can tell you where you can look too, because I do know that in an almanac that I don't own, it wasn't the most recent almanac that only just dropped, but in a previous almanac, they did list all the Blood Bowl winners. So I don't have that almanac. I collect the spikes, not the almanacs. But I do know they did have a table listing all the winners and runners-up of the Blood Bowl. So that would be the way to check which ones the Arctic Cragspiders won according to current law. But of course, the other thing to mention is that not current law, Arctic Cragspiders are affiliated with one of our favourite star players from a previous Down Under World Denizens, Ice Pelt Hammerblow. So there is a did you know about Ice Pelt and the Arctic Cragspiders, and they were competing for the Chaos Cup to be the champion against the Oldheim Ogres. Ice Pelt Hammerblow went down in a pile of ogres, and everybody thought he'd been killed. But then when it came time to lift the trophy, he pulled himself out of the pile and came along and held up the Chaos Cup with a big grin on his face. So there we go. We actually have, did you know from LRB5 and LRB6 linking Ice Pelt with the Arctic Cragspiders.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Coming up, we've got an interview with none other than Johnny Wilkinson. He's the tournament organiser of the Big V and knows everything that's going on in Victoria. But it's brought to you by our latest sponsor. Now, here in Australia, we have a real estate company called Ray White. And if you've ever been to Australia, you'll know that Ray White is a pretty prominent real estate here in Australia. But our new sponsor is Ray the White. I think there might be some undead leanings in there. So here we go. Here's our
This interview proudly brought to you by our premier sponsor for this episode, Ray the White.
That's the one. Here's our episode's premier sponsor, Ray the White.
Expert in unreal estate.
Ray the White Unreal Estate has all your final resting place needs covered, with a wide portfolio of everything from single body plots to dynastic mausoleums. We match properties to you with a personal, if not deathly touch. Take a moment to hear from some of our recently deceased happy clients.
G'day, Geo Deanham Jones here, and recently I passed away. but I still wanted to reside where I had been living all my life. But my change in a phase meant I needed a new property. Houses for living are just, well, too alive for us dead folks. Ray the White Unreal Estate sourced a human residence in my local area and were able to perform all the necessary rituals to purge it of life's essences and thus make it suitable as a contemporary crypt. 5-star plus green rated too.
Here at Ray the White, we serve all races, dead and living.
I's Combat Ironclaw. You know me from such things as the slaying of Emperor Sigismund IV. After finished campaign, I's look for Blood Bowl stadium-sized mass grave for victims, and Ray the White took the time to understand my special needs, such as the above-ground setting for Shrine to Mork. Ray gives several options from premium to cheap and cheerful. I's go with moderate option, something to fit all the bodies, but that don't break the plundered budget. Thanks, Ray.
So come in and meet our award-winning team of Jamie Digger, Gabriel Grubb, our sexton specialist, Nosferatu, and of course me, Ray the White.
And I am absolutely delighted to introduce to you none other than Johnny Wilkinson, the man, the myth, the legend. Johnny is not only the tournament organiser for the Big V, Australia and New Zealand's, in fact, the Southern Hemisphere's largest Blood Bowl tournament. Johnny is also a significant painter. He has actually been selected by Grebo at one point to paint some miniatures for their display of their team prior to release. So, Johnny comes with significant kudos in the painting sphere as well as in the tournament scene. So welcome to Down Under World Denizens, Johnny.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. That's much too kind. But very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Okay. Johnny, one thing we pride ourselves up here in Queensland is like we're this growing state of Blood Bowl, but for some reason Victoria has become the Blood Bowl state. Do you want to fill us in? How did that come about? What's happened in Victoria to make it this massive state of Blood Bowl players?
Oh, I honestly don't know. I'm not quite sure. I mean, the Melbourne Blood Bowl League has been a sort of a mainstay of the Victorian Blood Bowl scene for years. I think we're up to season 24, season 25 or something like that. I think that's always been the sort of the basis of the community down here. And then other communities just started popping up around that. There was a group of us over in the eastern suburbs and around Ringwood who started a league, and we're up to season 11. And that started a bit of excitement in that area, and then a couple more leagues have popped up, and in the north of Melbourne and then down in the Pakenham direction. So it's just, I don't know what's happened. It just seems to be a few sort of groups of people in different leagues popping up here, there, and everywhere, and then that sort of flowed on to the tournaments, and the tournaments now are getting obviously super popular, and like most of the tournaments are selling out in record time. So look, I don't know if there's much more than that. It's just I think we're just lucky down here, to be honest, with a good bunch of people.
Do you think it has anything to do with that rivalry between? I know for a while there was a big rivalry between like Geelong and was it Ballarat?
Ballarat. Not so sure about that now. I know that when something happens down Geelong, all the people from Ballarat and places, they all like to go down there because it's easy to get to. There does seem to be a big sevens scene down Geelong, more than anything at the moment. There's the thoughtless guys down there. They run a lot of sevens tournaments, so that seems to have galvanized things there. Look, I do think the Melbourne Blood Bowl League and the Ringwood Blood Bowl League had a little bit of a mini rivalry for a few years, and you would get some coaches join both, and some would jump between leagues from one season to another. But there's no huge sort of rivalries, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, so tell us about when you joined into the Victorian Blood Bowl League. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? When did you when did you get into Blood Bowl, and when did you kind of join in, the Victorian Blood Bowl scene?
Yeah. Oh, look, it's a fairly similar Blood Bowl journey to a lot of people. When I chat to people about my age, they seem to have followed a similar path in that I actually started playing Blood Bowl in first edition. I actually remember getting the very first box set outside my dad's butcher shop. I remember it vividly, and so loved it and played first and second edition a lot, and then went off to university and never touched hobby again. And it wasn't really until I think the Blood Bowl computer games came out. By this stage, I was in Australia and in Victoria, and the Blood Bowl computer games came out. I started playing those. I used to go around game stores asking if there was any Blood Bowl content, and no one had. I think the only stuff you could get in the store was Black Scorpion. And then 2016, the re-release of the edition came out, and that was it. That was me back in. So from about, I don't know, 1994 till about 2016, I didn't do any hobby. And I feel like I missed out on a lot of great years of hobby and Blood Bowl. But that was it. I jumped into the scene, went to October in probably end of 2016, maybe 2017, run by Joe Kano, and then just started going to the tournaments and thought, right, I'd like to run my own tournament. And it started off with just a 1-day tournament out in Ringwood, and that's what became the Big V, really. And that's my journey.
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm understanding there's big leagues down there. And now we have the Big V, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But is there much of a tournament scene in Melbourne, in Victoria as well?
Yeah, no, there's a pretty good tournament scene. There are some of the sort of more established tournaments like Gold Crush. There's been one that's been around a long time. That's up in Ballarat. Obviously, hence the name Gold Crush, and that one's always very popular. That sells out, in no time. That's usually a 50. Well, it's expanded in the last 2 or 3 years up to a 50 coach tournament. And then Mayhem has been one that has often been run down in Geelong, and that one is that's been around for years as well. They're two like real mainstays, but then we've had a lot of new ones pop up over the years. Country Quest was one that was based out of the Quest tournament, and then it became Country Quest that moved out to Wallen. And the leagues down in Pakenham, they created their own tournament. And the guys up in the north of the city, who in a league up there, they've created their own tournament, and the Big V, obviously. So there's a few now popping up. And look, they seem to sell out in no time as well. So it's a really strong scene down here. It's good.
Does it run the risk of being a bit saturated? Like, do you think there's room for more tournaments, or do you think you're at the right level? Do you think it's a bit too busy?
Like here in Queensland, we're getting to a stage where we've almost got too many tournaments throughout the calendar. Is that happening in Victoria as well?
Look, I don't think so. Not at the moment. In fact, there was that situation last year where it was I think it was Rise and Grind in South Australia, the 24-hour tournament, where they had limited tickets, and 75-80% of them were all bought by Victorians, and so they jumped on super quick to buy the tickets. And I think that sort of was a little bit of put some people's noses out of joint over in SA. So I think the guys down here are so keen to play that I don't think there's any harm or there's any danger of it getting oversaturated at all, to be honest.
Well, you're more than welcome up in Queensland for some of our tourneys.
Look, I'd love to come up. I struggle, I'll be honest, and I struggle to get to interstate tournaments, just mainly because of my work and family situation, that's all. Otherwise, if I could, I would, there's a heap of tournaments interstate that I'd love to go to, and it's forever a real bugbear of mine that I don't get to any of them. That a lot of people will come to mind, but I don't get to other tournaments, which is a shame, because I really want to try and get to some.
Johnny, do you prefer leagues or do you prefer tournaments?
Oh, that's a tough one. I do like them both. My preference with leagues. Every year I start a new team, and I think, right, this year I'm going to keep this team going. I'm going to really develop them and take them into next season. And then by the end of the season, I've gone off them and I decided to start a new fresh team. I don't know what it is, but for some reason I just like to play a fresh team every year, just try something different. I do like to give myself a painting challenge, maybe. So I'll pick a new team, say, right, I'm going to paint this team up, and so it becomes a hobby challenge as well as a new team to play. Also means I don't get very good at any of the teams, to be honest. Which I think most people who've played with me or played against me know that for a fact. I'm a fairly mid coach, to be honest. I do like tournament play, and look, the reason why I like tournaments is as much about the camaraderie and the day out as much as anything. Just getting to see all the faces again, all the people you know and you're friendly with. That's why I really like a tournament. League's slightly different than you're playing just one off against a friend, which is nice and so on. It's a bit more calmer than a tournament. Tournaments can be quite intense, but I do love them. But whether I prefer one or the other, if I really had to push, I'd probably say tournaments. Maybe because I run a tournament and I just like the tournament scene. So, but yeah, I do love them both.
All right. Well, and speaking of tournaments, like one of the biggest sort of bugbears over the last couple of years is the inclusion of star players, and how do we address that? Do we tax them? Do we ban them, and so on? Do you have an actual star player that is like your favorite that you would take any time, or maybe you just like the sculpt or the fluff around the of how they were built? Have you got a favorite star player?
Oh, it's a tricky one. It used to always be Jeremiah Cole, to be honest. Back in the day, he was always my favorite. And then he obviously got released recently. But if I had to pick I guess a current star player that I would use, I quite like Ripper. He's a great, he's very cardful. All the miniatures are right there of him are great. He's a really solid troll. I've used him a few times with Snotlings. And it's always nicer to use him rather than say the Morg or the Hack Flame sort of combo that makes your opponent cringe. So yeah, Ripper seems to get a bit more of a nice reception, a bit like Varag. Varag's teetering on the edge of it's a bit cringe sometimes taking Varag, say Varag and Hack Flame, but Ripper's kind of a safe option that no one seems too offended by. So I quite like him actually. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so hypothetically, Games Workshops comes to you and says, Johnny, we're putting out a new set. You can make one change. You can add a team, take out a team, add a rule, take out a rule. What would your one change to Blood Bowl be?
Oh, just one?
Well, if you've got a couple, list them.
Well, I think in terms of rule changes, I'm probably like a million people out there. I think the passing rule is one that I would like to change. I know there's heaps of people have got suggestions on what to do with that. So what I would suggest is no different to what everyone else would suggest. Just to make it just a little bit more prevalent in our games. I do like to play elf teams, so that's maybe a little bit biased, but there's nothing quite like that sort of last minute long pass down the pitch from an Orc Blitzer to an Orc Blitzer to score a touchdown. You really get your blood pumping. So that's one thing I'd really like to solve and get back to that, because it's now it's a running game. Even I'm just about to play Wood Elves in my new league, and even with traditionally we're one of the best passing teams, not necessarily the best, but one of the best. They're now just a running team. It's just safer. No one really wants to pass with an elf these days, even. So that's a shame. I'd like to fix that.
So, speaking of star players, tell us a little bit about, for our listeners who don't know, tell us a little bit about the two star players you brought to the Big V most recently. Tell us about Plugger and Merv Hewson.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure why I did it in the first place. I can't remember what. I think I just wanted to make a star player. And I thought because it was around the Big V and the Big V's linked to, the state of origin and so on, that was kind of the origins, I suppose, of where the name came from. To me, Plugger was the one player who exemplified the Big V, playing State of Origin for Victoria. And obviously AFL down here is such a big deal that he just seems like a natural choice. And so with him 2 years ago, and then Merv Hughes for this year just passed, they were the two star players I chose, and I linked more into the sort of 80s world of cricket, sort of, with that sort of retro feel with the yellow and the green stripes and so on. And Merv, in my mind, encapsulated that as well. So that's sort of how he came about. And I never really, with either of them, wanted to try and create a star player from scratch. I don't think rules writing is really my speciality. So I wanted to build on something that was there already. So Plugger was very much the mighty Zug, but he was given kick teammate, and his special rule was slightly different as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was something to do with getting the mascot rule where you can roll to get a free reroll. So that was Plugger, and then Merv was based off Stoutmead, the Norse guy who throws the barrels around.
Yep.
And look, I spoke to a few of the guys down here, and we mulled it over for ages how we could make him more attractive, because no one would ever take Stoutmead as a star player. Let's be honest, he's pretty useless. A lot of it boiled down to his cost, and also the taking away the ability to turn over if you fall down. So we kept the idea that if you rolled a 1, you knocked yourself down, but it wasn't a turnover. And that, I think that plus the reduced cost just really opened up his viability in a lot of teams, and both players available to all teams at the Big V. So we went from, I think there was one Plugger the year before. Ironically, there was about 2 Zugs the same year, even though Plugger was objectively better star player. And then I think we had 12 Merv star players this year. So that was probably, I know it sounds like I'm just saying this, that was probably the sweet spot I was hoping for, between 10 to 12. Enough to make it that people were excited by him, and not too much that every match you'd be playing a Merv character. Yeah. So I think we got that just about right.
So is that the plan for the Big B going forward? Are you going to grab a famous Aussie and convert them into a star player kind of for the next few years? Is that kind of the plan?
Yeah, like I explained to someone recently when we were talking about next year, and the idea was never to make it based around Aussie sports, even though, yes, the last 2 have been Aussie sports. It was more about culturally Australian, so we had like the AFL that year, and then this year just passed was like, the cricket in the bright yellow pajamas. So, someone even suggested, why don't you make it Kath and Kim? And, that sort of idea would work. And, I'd still love to do something like that, to be honest. But
and you could base it off dribble and draw.
Exactly. But I'm talking more like the leg warmers and the sweatbands and, the bright, lurid lycra, that sort of look. Because, and this is what I'm hoping for next year, if you really lean into that sort of theme, and you can get the coaches sort of embedded in it as well, then you can really open up, really good cosplay as well, and get people really sort of dressed up. So hence we went for the surf life-saving theme for this year coming. So
no, that's
really
that's scary and dangerous if you want cosplay in that space.
100%. But there's also a lot of scope for fun, I think, with it as well. And so so that's where we're going this year, and the idea will be to have another star player and maybe more potentially, and still working that one out. And then I
was going to
think
guess,
this year,
I was going to guess, is it going to be Grant Kenny, with the surf life saving kind of theme?
oh, look, you wouldn't believe how many suggestions I've been receiving over the last month and so, and everything from all sorts. Sorry, my mind's just gone blank all of a sudden, and I'll probably remember them all in a minute. But yeah, haven't really got too far down that track yet, but there will definitely be if something happened, and then I think Plugger and Merv will come back, rebranded. I think we'll rebrand them the cards with this year's sort of Big V branding. It'll all be red and yellow, obviously, and so they'll both get a re-release sort of halfway through the year, I think, with new star player cards and potentially a tweak if we feel that they need a bit of a tweak to to make them sort of the same but slightly different potentially.
Yeah, well, we've actually got Stewie here, and Stewie actually went down to the Big V
Yes.
last year, and he's actually got a suggestion for a new star player. Stewie, what did you come up with?
Yeah, so I guess I thought of Warney. He's
Yes.
the Victorian cricket player. The Bay 13 was obviously the theme last year, and I know that bowling and throwing doesn't really go hand in hand, but potentially, could Warney as a star player that's a thrower, some maybe make it into the Big V there at some point in the future.
Yeah, 100%. And look, it's nothing to stop, a star player like Warney being introduced, regardless of the overall theme. I mean, you could argue that cricket's just happened, so we might have to avoid cricket for a while, but there's nothing stopping us just introducing him regardless. As I say, my only hesitation is ever trying to create something from scratch. I think it's dangerous because without the proper sort of play testing and stuff, you could really get yourself into a deep hole. And the last thing I want is someone exploiting a star player that hasn't been properly thought out and winning or getting close to winning the tournament because of it. Luckily, neither Merv or Plugger were that game breaking that none of the top coaches, no offense to the coaches you did take them, but none of the top coaches took either of them. And that's generally how you would expect it to be, that the top coaches focus more on their teams and their tactics, and maybe less on star players. And again, apologies if I've someone's listening and think that's bullshit. But that's how I sort of see it. That someone who's going to win the tournament's more than likely not going to be taking a star player. And also I've tried to introduce taxes and stuff over the years to make them less attractive anyway, the star players at the Big V. So I never want to ban any outright, even the mega stars. I think that's going a bit too far. And people can do that with their own tournaments. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. And personally, if I was playing in a tournament where they were banned, I wouldn't care, because I don't love them. But I like to allow everyone the option to play them if they really, really want to, but they have to give up a heap and they have to make sacrifices. And that's all I meant earlier, is I think some of the really top coaches aren't willing to make those sacrifices for one piece that it could potentially triple skull in the first roll of turn one, and that's your game over. So I don't know if I answered that question. I probably answered it
that's
3
great.
times over. Sorry about that.
I guess I still haven't actually been able to take a star player to a tournament. I just couldn't fit one into my roster comfortably for the Big V last year. But I guess from my point of view, going to the Big V as a first timer, I've got to say I was super impressed with the organisation of the whole event. I love that.
Thank you.
I had an absolute ball there. The refs wandering around in the striped jersey was just brilliant. The whole atmosphere was amazing. So I guess, do you see the Big V growing again this year? Is it the numbers wise? What sort of cap do you think you'd be?
Yeah, it's hard to know. Look, I'll be honest, I was very bullish after last year. So we had 144, not the year just past, but the year before. And I was very bullish. I was like, yeah, easy. We can get to 200 easy, not a problem. And look, it didn't. I'll hold my hands up and say it didn't work out that way. We got to 164, so that's obviously a good jump. There was a heap of dropouts this year actually, for various reasons, and it happens. We all expect that. So, look, I now am a bit more circumspect, if that's the right word, where I think it might grow organically a little bit more. I don't know how much more we can really get everyone in, over a 2-day weekend interstate. It's difficult. It wouldn't even surprise me if it stayed around about the same number and just fluctuate up and down from now on. I don't know how much scope there is to grow a lot more. The community is good in Australia, but it's not Europe or the States where you can get heaps of people coming from overseas. There is a ceiling, I think, and whilst I'll try and grow it more, I don't know how much more it can grow. Maybe just be happy for it just to stay around about the same number, to be honest.
Yeah, I do think, you did mention there was a number of people who pulled out, and I think some of that was a little bit unfortunate. I think, some of the guys from South Australia had flight difficulties and so on. So, I still think you can probably grow from what you achieved as significant was. I think you can, get pretty close to that 200 if you don't actually break it. So, yeah. Anyway, just encouraging.
Yeah, definitely.
I still think there is still some. I agree with you. There's got to be a cap somewhere. I think you're still testing out where that is.
Well, look, the venue. I think the venue is still quite comfortable with the extra 20 coaches this year. I think I have done a lot of space planning on it. It's part of what I've done growing up, or part of my career. I've done planning and stuff like that. So I've been able to plan comfortably up to 200. And I think beyond that, it would start to struggle a wee bit. Look, I love the venue, but it has its challenges as well. But no venue's perfect, and it's right now it fits our needs in terms of location stuff perfectly. And trust me, I've done a lot of research on different venues around Melbourne. I think I may have contacted almost every venue that's available, and this one fit most of the criteria as the best out of all of them, to be honest.
Well, speaking of trying to test out that cap, give us a quick plug. Give us Big V 2025. Give us a bit of a plug.
Look, it's still early days yet, and it will probably be very quiet now for the next 2 or 3 months. There's a couple of tournaments going on down here, and I'll just probably take a bit of a back seat for a while and just give my brain a bit of a rest as well. But it is going to be a couple of weeks earlier this year, sort of mid-November, and that's it was always supposed to be mid-November, but a couple of things happened last year that pushed it back to the very end of November, and that was starting to get a little bit late in the year for people. It finished on the 1st of December, and it starts to bleed a bit into the sort of Christmas and the Christmas sort of preparations, and I was quite conscious of that. A lot of people were keen to get it earlier, and look, it is going to be fairly much the same as the year just passed. Slight tweaks to the rules, but not much. Hopefully a new star player and a couple of other little secrets that have been percolating since before last year's Big V. But they will be revealed in time, but not yet. And then it's really going to lean into that surf lifesaver sort of vibe. And I've got a team trying to expand the team as well, and I think that's what the secret of the success was last year was building up teams to help build it out, to prepare for it, to organize it, and then the team on the day, like Stuart mentioned, the referees and stuff, they were amazing. And it gets to a certain point where you absolutely cannot do these things by yourself. And this year I tried to delegate as much as possible, and behind the scenes with computer stuff, with website stuff, with the roster building, and then on the day. So all that sort of large group of people really help. So hopefully add more people this year to and take on everyone's feedback. So there's always lots of good constructive feedback every year, and take a lot of that on and try and then each year try and improve a couple of more things, so that it gets slightly better in increments every year. Maybe not try and solve everything, but try and solve a few of the main bugbears that people have, and just I've always wanted it to be the sort of event where you can go every year and you see the people you haven't seen since last year. You see the people from, say, Queensland or from WA or from New South Wales, and this is as much to do with getting together and catching up with people that you haven't seen in a long time, as much to do with that as playing Blood Bowl. That's where I like to see it, and that's what I try and encourage.
Yep. So you heard it here first on Down Under World Denizens. Big V 2025 better than Big V 2024. Heard it here first.
100%.
Okay, and speaking of improvements, I just want to know, how do you get your ideas? Do you look at other tournaments, throughout Australia or indeed the world, or do you just come up with them yourself? Now, the reason I'm asking this is because I'm actually going to wholeheartedly steal one of your ideas, and I believe it's your Bay 13, where you move the based on how much fan factor you have.
Yeah.
I'm just going to whole out steal that for one of my tournaments come up. Do you do the same? Do you look at other tournaments and get ideas?
Not so much ideas as sort of hints and tips on how to do things better. I've been doing that for years now. Originally from people like John O'Delacy or James, Rabbit, James Finmore, people who've been doing tournaments here for a long time. Sorry, Adam, who's doing Southern Shrike Bowl, I shouldn't forget. And I'll ask those guys questions on how they do things and how to do things better. And then I started reaching out to like James Luft, who obviously does Chaos Cup and his predecessor there, and Dan, who does the NAFC over in the UK. And just so I might have a specific question, or I might see something when they post about their turns, go, oh, that's a nice idea. And I'll say, look, how did you do that? And look, at half the time it turns out to be just something fairly basic, but it's thought, why have I never thought about that? Right, I'm going to do something similar. And look, obviously, goes without saying that the World Cup was a huge influence. It was just fascinating to go there and just see how everything was done in such a large scale. And it really influenced me a lot on how to do things better and what maybe a couple of things to avoid as well. So look, as I say, just steal, not so much steal, but get influence and ask questions from other experienced TOs. That's typically what I'll do for the Big V.
Yeah, no, we in Queensland wouldn't know anything about stealing other people's rule sets, and do not ever look at the Brisbane City Bash rule set, because it may or may not be a cookie cutter job of the Big V.
Look, I don't mind. I don't have any. I don't think the Big V. I don't think it's any secret. The Big V rule set is fairly standard. It's not groundbreaking in any way, and I've never set out to be that. I've probably done the opposite, actually, to keep it fairly neutral, to just to not scare some people off. People get turned off if it's swings too much one way or swings too much the other way. And I think it's good to have a good variation in tournaments, especially within your own sort of state, for example. I think we do that pretty well down in Victoria, and that one tournament might be a real sort of heaps of skills, and the teams are all players with 6 skills and stuff, and that's great. And then there's other where there's no skills at all, a bit like maybe the World Cup rule set, and I've tried to sort of land somewhere in between. And so I'm not sure where I started with this answer, but that's all. As I say, I don't think the Big V is a groundbreaking rule set in the slightest, and so I can imagine there's heaps of tournaments out there that are very similar and yeah, in terms of their rules, so that's not a problem at all.
Yeah, Johnny. So I guess when it comes to playing teams, if you had to pick one to play in a tournament, if you could get up to Queensland for a tournament, for example, which team do you reckon you'd pick to play? And I guess the other part would be if you had one that you would just pick just to paint, just because of the cool look of the team, the aesthetics.
Yeah. Well, look, it's funny because I always like to sort of gravitate back towards the elves, and then I might play them in a tournament and get absolutely smashed, and that always then turns me off, and I then decide to go on a run of playing like a bash team. So I might play an elf team and then like for this, and then I end up playing undead for a year, and then I might do the same again and end up playing orcs for a year, and so um, I'm back to that stage now where I'm going to dip back into the elves again. I haven't played wood elves in the new version, the new edition. So last time I played them was when every elf was passing on a 2+, and it was easy. So I might get a bit of a shock when I attend a tournament with the new wood elves. I think they're still a good team.
Now, come on, Johnny. I didn't pick you as a dirty power gamer. How dare you pick Wood Elves? They're currently number one of all 30 teams in terms of win.
I have to be a power gamer because I'm a middle of the road coach at best. So I need any help I can get. To be honest, if I play a really bad team, I'll bomb really badly. So yeah, that's why I have to pick undead and orcs and things like that, because I need any help I can get to try and get some results. And also,
what about painting? Yeah.
Well, look, I suppose that's an easy one because I've just got 2 projects, not on the go, because I was about to start one and then I abandoned it to start another one, and so the first one, which I got just around about the time of Big V, was the gnome team by Grebo. I just, when it was released, I just absolutely loved it. It looked amazing. And I no longer paint for Grebo. I haven't done it in a couple of years now. That was a little while ago now, where they used to send me teams, but that doesn't happen now. Which I wouldn't have the time to commit to that, unfortunately. But yeah, that team just looks awesome. And the only reason I switched was because I wanted to go down the tartan route with the gnomes, and I got them and I opened them up and I started, looking at them, undercoating them, and I thought they were tiny. I mean, yes, I know they're stunties and I know they're supposed to be small, but I looked at them and thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to do tartan on these. And plus, tartan isn't really designed for hats, pointy hats. When you think about it, it's obviously it's supposed to be a kilt. So that then just got me thinking, and it's one of those things where I have, a mad brain rush, and I think I went out this very same day and bought the GW Norse team, because I decided to sort of lean into that sort of Norse, but with the Ulster Scots, tartan wearing sort of clan vibe. So those are my 2 sort of painting projects. I will do the tartan wearing Norse first, and with the aim to maybe play them towards the end of the year if I get them finished in time, and then I think I'll roll over into the Grebo gnomes. Plus, with the gnomes as well, I'm a bit apprehensive about playing them. I'm not convinced how well they'll go. So yeah, so those are my 2 teams that I really want to paint and do a good job of.
With your UK background there, Johnny, maybe you could go Wombles rather than gnomes. Wombles of Wimbledon.
Wow, yeah, and I haven't heard that in a long time, actually. Yeah, 100%. But that's what I'm trying to tap into with the Norse, sort of getting back into that sort of ancient, sort of medieval, sort of Scots-Irish sort of feel. That there's a really rich, varied sort of history and stories back from where I come from. So I'm really trying to tap into that as well.
Yeah, cool. Hey, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the journey to where the Big V is. Like, a lot of people, know about the Big V fairly recently. You kind of to many parts of Australia and New Zealand, the big V is kind of suddenly arrived, but it hasn't really been a sudden arrival. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that journey, the process that got you to where the big V is today? Do you want to tell us a little bit about, how the big V grew? And in particular, did you learn anything in that process that's kind of a tip for anybody who's listening, who's a tournament organizer?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think it's been around a while. It's nowhere near as old as some of the tournaments out there. I'll fully admit that. It probably started and grew before the sort of big rush came. That's happened maybe in the last 4 or 5 years. So the first couple of tournaments were still fairly, they were in their 30s in terms of coach attendance, which, to be honest, back then was great. That was kind of, I remember at that point, I'm thinking 30 in the 30s that's as good as it's going to get. And they were based out in Ringwood in the eastern suburbs and just in a local game store. And look, I think the only reason I went, I think it started off as a 1-day tournament and just chatting to people, and people were saying, look, there isn't a 2-dayer in Victoria. Why don't you make it into a 2-dayer? And that's how I decided to go for it. Became a 2-day tournament, and then just I don't know, it just started to grow, and people always do ask, how it grew, and I really don't have the answer, to be honest. I do a lot in my career. I do a lot of sales and marketing, so I'm probably employing a lot of, I guess, tactics and things that I use as part of my everyday career to help expand. But look, I think the bottom line is obviously everyone knows I smash the socials a lot. There's no hiding that. I think that's important. Communication. The main reason people are going to come to your tournament is by telling them all about it. And I'm really seeing that there's a few guys out there that are doing some really great comms, and it works really well. George up in Sydney does a lot of great communications, and now Chris, one of your local guys, Chris, his work on Cane Toad, I think, is outstanding. I love it. And these guys are starting to really get the comms right, and I think that's really important. Because I remember a tournament coming up, and a couple of years ago I was chatting to a guy here, and I said, oh yeah, I'm going to tournament week, and he goes, what tournament? And it was a local coach in Victoria. There was a tournament happening in 2 days' time, and he hadn't heard one thing about it. That's how little communication there was for that tournament, and it just really hit home that time that you're never going to get people to come to a tournament if you don't tell them repeatedly over a long period of time. It's as simple as that, really. Unless you've got a really good tournament with a really big history and people have been going to it for years, that's not so critical. But if it's a brand new tournament, it's for someone who's starting a new tournament now, just really hit the comms big time and go to other tournaments. I think that's super, super important. Go to as many local tournaments and get your face out there and get known to people, because people will be more inclined to go to a tournament if they've seen you and they know who you are and they know you play Blood Bowl, and you're not just a game store that's trying to take advantage of the newfound popularity in Blood Bowl. They see you're a part of the community, and I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, Johnny, I haven't been there to the Big V. I've talked plenty to the guys up here about the tournament. Can't give it enough raps, as I said earlier. Just going back to the star players there.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you'll probably tweak the cards and reissue the cards with the red and the blue this year for Merv and Plugger.
Yeah.
Be able to see any more models, the minis available along with those cards?
Oh, of those two players. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So I'll probably do a reprint of both. I did find the other day, about a week or two ago, I found a little stash of them in one of my boxes where I had, I think, 6 of Merv and 7 of Plugger, or the other way around. And I thought, oh, people were asking for these, so I put them up on the website, and they'd all sold within a day, 24 hours. So I think they're still fairly popular, which is great. I mean, obviously, they're designed 3D sculpted by Ugni, which I think everyone's familiar with, and he does some great work. And as everyone knows, he's always really keen to help tournaments out and design miniatures for them, which is great. I must put a shout out to Polly Jackson from Queensland, who he did the original art concept for Merv, which was amazing. And so yeah, he did an amazing job with that. But yeah, look, I'll probably get a reprint of both, and then reprint the cards for both, and then whatever comes next for the tournament, sort of release them all sort of hopefully mid-year, and yeah, as I say, open them up to be played again, because the idea was a Plugger was 1 year, Merv was the next year, and so this year there's been a few people asking if we can have them both back again. So I think I might bring them both back to be available in the tournament this year. Definitely.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll have to shamelessly admit that I was the buyer of one of the Bug Up minis, and was lucky enough to get a card with it as well.
Oh, do you know what it was, Stuart? I found one card, and I remember I was chatting at the big fee, and I thought, right, Stuart's going to get that card, and so I just dumped that in with the package. So you obviously left a good impression on me at the big fee that I thought you deserved the card with your miniature.
Well, cheers, thanks for the wrap. Appreciate it.
Not at all, and I'm not just saying that for the podcast. That's the truth.
Alrighty, I think with that, Millsy, it's probably over to you.
Yeah, I want to ask you one of our questions that we ask all of our interviewees. Nothing to do with Blood Bowl whatsoever. What's your favourite pub meal?
Right, okay. So this will probably betray my roots. I like to go for bangers and mash with nice onion gravy. Yeah, that's usually the one that I like. You can't go wrong with that. I've seen some of the local favorites, like Parma and stuff. You can go badly wrong with those. There's obviously amazing ones out there, but bangers and mash is usually fairly good, safe option. So yeah, I like to go for that actually.
Yeah, nice. Yep, can't go too far wrong. I agree with that. Hey, I just wanted to touch base because we're chatting to you, and we talked briefly earlier about the Victorian Blood Bowl scene, and this is kind of our final touchdown on our around the ground segment where we go all the way around. And so I just want to come right back to talk about Victoria for a moment. Do you know how Victoria is going with their Ausbowl State Champs team? Do you know if it's been selected or if the selection process is going?
It's pretty close, actually. So I actually saw a message tonight, actually, just checking with two of the players. I think they're waiting on a couple of players to confirm their availability or not. It's always been a thing in Victoria, is getting players to be able to make the journey. In this case, over to New Zealand, and it's obviously not easy. And so in the past, it's always come down to, stick your hand up if you're willing to go. This year, we used the Vic Masters, which is our sort of equivalent of take the results from all the tournaments and I guess in a nutshell, say who's the best. And so, I think the basis for seeing who could join the team was the first 6 players in the Vic Masters. And look, I think that as a system worked fairly well because, it showed a consistent level of performance over the year. And it's interesting because, you think who's been the best player all year, but when you actually see it with the results next to it, then it really sort of underlines it. And, some players, for the last ASC, some of the players who were great then maybe haven't played so well this year. So and vice versa, someone that was never, maybe not even in the scene. There's one guy in particular here in Victoria who I think his first tournament was last year's Big V, not the one just passed, but the one before. And he's finished top 4, top 5 in almost every tournament since. And won a couple in between as well. So, you have to, I think, give everyone a chance. And then, but it's very close. It's very close. I think they're going to be announcing it imminently. So, and it's, from what I've seen, it's a pretty strong team. I've seen the WA one, and I've seen the New South Wales one. Is there any more being released yet? Oh, there
Yeah,
was the North
yeah,
Island, New Zealand.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, that was a pretty good team as well. So that's about but the new NZ one was very strong, I thought. The New South Wales one was very strong. Actually, the WA one as well was really good too. So it's gonna be a real cracker of a tournament, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Hey, is there anything else you'd like to say while you're on Down Under World Denizens? Is there anything we haven't touched on that you wanted to mention or highlight or comment on?
Oh, I don't think so. Yeah, look, the truth is, I think in Australia we're really lucky. I think we've got a really good community. There's gaming communities in general. I think the Blood Bowl community in specifically is really strong in Australia. I think that's really good. I think it's taken off not just in Victoria, but I think it's taken off everywhere. You're seeing lots of new tournaments pop up, and everybody see it now, and they're selling out and getting big numbers. So I think that's awesome. I think it's a great time to be playing Blood Bowl in Australia. And yeah, shout out to all the TOs out there, all the guys that I meet at tournaments. I think we're a really good, friendly bunch, and I really enjoy it. It's good fun.
All right, my final question. Do you need any more volunteers for Big V 2025? Do we want to do a little recruit?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think, especially I think the volunteers on the weekend had a great time. Stuart said he saw the referees running around, and look, the referee shirts is not a new idea again. I mean, I know NAFC have been doing that for years, and the World Cup did it. But I just thought, look, this year let's just make it a little bit more special. So the guys had a great time. They enjoyed it. Two of the guys, Jake and Andrew, they switched places. So one played on day one while the other one refereed, and then they swapped for day two. So they got the best of both worlds. They got 3 games, and they also got to volunteer and have a bit of a laugh too. So yeah, look, probably 1 or 2 of those guys might return, but I think sort of volunteering every year is a bit tough, and is a bit too much for an ask. Obviously, we get people like Kate, who's Robbie Last's wife, and she turns up to do Cheeky V. She turns up to do the Big V, and she's amazing. She puts in a lot of time and effort. So we will be, maybe sort of later in the year, I'll put the call out to see if I can get a couple more volunteers and drum out a bit more support. Yeah, thank you.
Actually, one thing you just mentioned then was the Cheeky V, and we actually haven't mentioned anything about that. And being that I love the sevens variant, do you want to fill us in with the Cheeky V?
Yeah, definitely. The Cheeky V needs its own shout out, because it's the brainchild of Robbie Last, who I just mentioned, Robbie and his wife Kate. Robbie's a really popular member of the community down here in Victoria. Lovely guy and lots of fun. And years ago, well, I can't remember when it started, but I was keen to get a Friday night, something happening on the Friday night, like a lot of the big tournaments like Chaos Cup and stuff do, just to sort of tap into that interstate coaches visiting, something to do on the Friday night. And Robbie put his hand up, and he loves sevens, and he's got some amazing ideas and a lot of energy and a lot of fun. So he's always been quite reluctant to expand it too much. I think this year, he capped it at 40, I think it was. But there was a lot of people, especially from interstate, who were keen to be part of that. So who knows? Robbie might expand it further, and Robbie and I have already been throwing ideas around based around the surf life saving and the ideas he's got for Cheeky V, and the reason why it was always called Cheeky V is that he sort of always envisages it as the cheeky little brother of the Big V. So it was a bit irreverent, a bit fun, a bit as I say, cheeky, and just come there and have a laugh, and then you get your serious playing done over the weekend. That's how Robbie's always spun it, and I love that. And so he's already got some amazing plans and ideas for this year, and sort of to tap into the whole sort of beachside theme that we're going to run with this weekend or the weekend in mid-November. So yeah, it's a great tournament, especially like sevens, and lots of people turn up for the sevens and don't turn up for the 11s. Some people just love sevens Blood Bowl.
Yeah, look, we just want to, at Down Under World Denizens, just say thank you, Johnny. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for, the whole journey, the little V, the big V. Thank you what you've done for Blood Bowl in Victoria, and indeed, thank you for what you've done for Blood Bowl in the Southern Hemisphere.
Thank you.
No, seriously, and I love looking at your miniatures too that you paint. I'm following your Norse very eagerly. I've loved your Snotling team. I've loved your Orc team. Yeah, I really do love your painting style. Something I aspire to emulate. But yeah, just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you do for Blood Bowl. Your Blood Bowl painting competition you ran one year. Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you, and appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Not at all, and thanks for inviting me. It's very kind of you to interview me and have me on. Thank you.
No worries. Cheers. Thanks, Johnny.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, Melody. Cheers, Babs, and cheers, Stu.
Cheers, Johnny. So, do we want to say what we're going to what's coming up? It's Brisbane City Bash. Hopefully, on next episode, we'll be able to announce the Queensland team.
Yeah, and we're going to have a theme for episode 11, which will be a big theme, big current theme. We seem to get a lot of interest when we have a current topic that is thematic, and we have one for episode 11. We want to talk about the benefits of playing Blood Bowl and mental health.
Oh, yeah. We've touched on that with Lee a little bit as well, but yeah, we can get back into that some more.
Yeah, we're gonna get a guest speaker on who shall remain under wraps for now, but yeah, we're gonna make that a bit of the focus of the episode.
I mean, under wraps, it's written in there, Simon Bond, aka Glowworm.
Now I have to edit that out.
You're gonna have to edit this part out anyway.
All right, who wants to say stuff? You want to say your stuff at the end of the episode? Out for me, it's win or the casualty bin, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to say that kind of stuff?
Oh, now you've put me on the spot. I won't be able to do it again.
It's bin or the casualty win.
Well, that's a perfectly valid strategy. Most Kaz is a thing.
Yeah, well, I do need that at the Brisbane City Bash. I need most cash. So.
Win and the casualty bin.
Ooh, I like that.
Nice.
And as always, this is Millsy saying it's win or the casualty bin.
And it's Bab saying, hey, hope you're managing to meet some of your Blood Bowl goals for 2025. Hope your painting table is getting some attention. Hope you're getting some game time, rolling some powers, rolling some sixes.
And this is Wilts, looking to see whether Chaos Undivided can once again become Chaos Undefeated.
Using Cat's tabletop dice.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I figure if Wilts and I were tag teaming on that one.
Okay, now last thing we all have to do together. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
That's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
That's brilliant. That was shocking timing.
Reminds me of another podcast with their cheering fans.
Oh, gee.
They never managed to line up.
And Drew takes like 4 hours to get that segue in it. The other thing we'll have, hopefully by next episode, is we'll be able to know where the World Cup's going to be held.
Ooh, yeah, that'll be really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I'm keen for that.
Oh, is that coming out in the next month?
Yeah, in fact.
15th?
Yeah, 15th, yeah.
Is it 15th of February?
So Saturday, well, probably won't be announced until at least Sunday our time. We clock around the globe pretty early.
Yeah, so that'll be looking forward to that one.
Yeah, and I don't feel like we have to cover the World Cup in too much detail because I feel like it's got a lot of attention from other podcasts. And
Oh yeah, like we were just in breaking news. You've probably already heard, but the World Cup's going to be in wherever it's going to be.
Yeah, but I think the point is that, actually the World Cup decision making.
Insert city name here.
Yeah, well, the World Cup, World Cup has always been a decision made by a big committee. It's been a committee. This time around it's 100 coaches, but it's always had a lot of coaches' input, and but it's while that's been quite a robust decision, it's been a private discussion and decision. It's never been public like this before. Not Alicante, not anything like it. It's always been something that the NAF decide themselves and then come out. This is the first time it's played out in public. It's like what the media did during the Vietnam War. Like it suddenly brought something that's meant to be, something that goes on confidentially, and suddenly it's on everybody's TV screens or whatever. Like it's game changing.
So what do you reckon? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it has two sides.
That it's so public.
Just like the media's involvement in Vietnam War.
Yeah, I can see both.
It had pros and it had cons, right? Like it had advantages, like the horrendous nature of war was broadcast publicly. War is horrendous. There's no doubt about that. And so it brought about a whole bunch of protests in the US that ultimately brought about the end of the Vietnam War, right? But and not just in the US, everywhere, globally. But there are downsides to it too. So, I think the World Cup being public, I think, is similar. You've got pros and you've got cons.
Yeah, certainly opening up to the public to put, their personal bias in their comments for everything was interesting to see. Some negative, some positive. Like it went both ways. One thing I did love was every podcast I've listened to when they've talked to the organisers, they've been able to answer all of those questions that the public have come up with. So maybe that's a good thing by putting it out to the public. So these questions get asked, and the organisers can then go and can answer those questions rather than just the NAF going, well, here's the details. I've got to make my decision from that.
Previously, those questions would be asked between the people making the decision and the committees who are bidding. There'd be like when you vote for the NAF president, there's a forum, an antiquated forum that you jump on and you ask your questions there and they respond.
There's a Q&A.
Yeah, there was a similar kind of process behind closed doors there. But, I guess maybe not everybody thinks of all the different criteria. For example, I didn't really think much about the streaming angle of the World Cup until I heard it on one of the podcasts. And I thought, oh, yeah, that probably is a big deal. But I don't play BB3. I don't really play Fumble. So, I'm not in that online Blood Bowl space, but I can understand that for a certain type of people, that's a big criteria.
Yeah. Is this turning into another half an episode, or are we just chatting?
I might edit.
Sorry, I was on for half a second
Yeah,
there.
I might edit and put bits of it at the
Oh,
end. Nothing wrong with that.
Down Under World Denizens discusses games, workshops, games and products such as Blood Bowl, Gutter Bowl, Dungeon Bowl and Crunch. We also discuss other fantasy football board games and concepts from other companies such as Dread Ball, Guild Ball, Grind, Elf Ball, Myth and Goal, Blitz Bowl, Chaos Ball, Monsters of the Midway and Feud Ball. We discuss products and services such as miniatures or software made by producers suitable for several of these board games. Games Workshop terms and conditions in point 2.1 state they grant the user the non-exclusive right to use their authorised intellectual property for broadcasting and other media-related activities such as commentary and opinion pieces, blogs, and other similar informational and descriptive purposes. Down Under World Denizens respects and honours these terms.
Babs, where are you? He's gone. Whoop whoop. And it shows our preparedness for our next episode.
Well, and I think also it shows we want to stay in our lane as a podcast. Like we don't need to be all things to all people. Like, I don't ever see a need for us to suddenly branch into discussing painting techniques because, for a start, we're a podcast. Like, there's no way we're going to be able to beat somebody that's a YouTube video on discussing painting techniques.
Yeah.
And there's plenty enough out there already, yeah.
So, we should stay in our lane. Our lane is, we do dives into the lore and We talk about Blood Bowl in Australia, and we touch on what else is going on globally. I think that's a good lane to be in.
Yeah, our lane is having lots of people to interview. There's other podcasts that want to come into our lane now.
Our lane is getting our facts correct first time.
Oh, bam! You want some aloe vera for that? Because you just got burned.
Yeah, that's it. We're the podcast that does some homework.
Quite like what we're doing. I'm guessing when we get dice, we'll stick them up on Etsy.
Yeah, well,
and
I'm actually
and
I'm doing a bit of homework on that at the moment, actually, because I think realistically we probably want the plastic rather than the resin, unless we want both.
The resin would be
no.
a higher charge than the plastic ones, wouldn't
Yeah, and particularly when we want to try and put
Yeah.
a margin on it, because we want to try and make a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Ideally, I'd love a point where, like, we've got so many of them, or we've made so much from them that we just hand them to our opponents at tournaments.
Yeah.
I would think, especially ATC, we're going as team Down Under World Denizens. If we go as a team, I'd like to hand out dice to our opponents.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Otherwise,
cool.
just at a normal tournament, I'm just Millsy playing you. But at a team event, yeah, we're the Down Under World Denizens. Thanks for playing. Here's some dice. Don't roll them against us. We'll give it to you at the end of the match.
No, they can roll them against us all they like.
Well, no. I've heard of 2 podcasts that have that rule. So 2 separate podcasts give out D6 and say you're not allowed to ever roll them against us.
Against us.
Oh, okay then. Fair enough.
Yeah. You got to look at your clientele, though. Could you imagine going to Rowan Latter and saying, mate, you're not allowed to roll these against me? Oh, that means I'll roll them every time I want.
Exactly. I wouldn't go so far as to insist people roll those dice against me, but I'd certainly be happy for them
Well,
to.
if he wants to insist on that, then you just say, well, you don't get your set then, buddy.
I'll mail them to you when I get home.
I'll encase them in a resin block so you can keep them and you can have them, but you can't roll them.
Nice.